April 27th, 2011.
There's a tornado right there. God, everybody go. The wind.
An ordinary spring Wednesday in the foothills of northeast Alabama. And by sundown, 25 people in DeKalb County would be gone. Children walked home from school under bright skies. Farmers turned the soil. Graduation banners hung in storefront windows. By the time the sun went down over Sand Mountain, whole neighborhoods would no longer exist. Houses would be erased to their foundations. A school bus would be stripped to its chassis. A stone house on Lingerfelt Road would be lifted clean off the earth. It was the fourth and final EF5 of the largest tornado outbreak ever recorded in human history. But to understand how an afternoon could end like that, we have to go back. Back before the sirens, before the warnings, before anyone in Rainsville knew their town was about to make history. Northeast Alabama sits in the heart of what meteorologists call Dixie Alley, a stretch of the South where warm, moist air off the Gulf collides with cooler air spilling down from the plains, and where the worst tornadoes do not always come in the spring afternoons people expect. They come at night. They come during football practice. They come hidden behind rain. The South had been here before. In March of 1925, the tri-state tornado tore through Missouri, Illinois, and Indiana, and killed 695 people in a single afternoon, the deadliest tornado in American history. In April of 1974, the super outbreak unleashed 148 tornadoes across 13 states and took 319 lives. In November of 1989, an F4 ripped through Huntsville, Alabama, and killed 21. In April of 1998, an F5 leveled neighborhoods in West Birmingham and ended 32 more. Alabama knew tornadoes. Alabama had buried its dead from tornadoes before. But what was building in the upper atmosphere on the morning of April 27, 2011, was something forecasters would later describe as among the most conducive setups for violent tornadoes ever documented. The atmosphere had other plans entirely. The morning had already been strange. A line of storms had swept through DeKalb County before sunrise, knocking out power across the foothills, shaking sleeping families awake with thunder that rattled windows in their frames.
It's to provide adequate warning for storms that can kill people. And if we're not successful...
By the time children should have been heading to school, the lights in Rainsville were out. Some schools dismissed early. Others held students for breakfast and waited for the sky to clear. By mid-morning, the clouds broke. The sun came out. It looked, for a few hours, like the worst of it had passed. In Fife and Sylvania and Hennegar, people went about a Wednesday. A woman drove to the post office. A mechanic raised a Chevrolet on a lift. Plainview High School's softball team practiced on a field at the edge of Rainsville, while teachers graded papers in the empty classrooms. At the Huddle House on Highway 75, the lunch rush was just easing off, and the cooks were turning over the grill for the dinner crowd. Down in central Alabama, on televisions tuned to ABC 33/40, meteorologist James Spann stood in front of a radar map and asked people to listen. He had been on the air, off and on, for hours. He would stay on the air, off and on, for the rest of the day.
I want to show you this from the graphic system. The Storm Prediction Center has placed Alabama in a high risk.
You can support us by liking, subscribing, and telling us which country you are watching from. But there was something hidden. Something no one in DeKalb County could see yet. 200 miles to the southwest, a storm cell had already dropped one of the largest tornadoes in Alabama history on a small town called Hackleburg, and it was still moving northeast. 1:45 p.m., near a small dot on the map called Harperville, Mississippi. A thunderstorm explodes upward off the warm Gulf air and begins to rotate. To the meteorologists watching it on radar, This is now a supercell, a self-sustaining engine of violence with its own miniature low-pressure heart. It will drop a violent EF5 tornado in Mississippi within the hour. By the time it crosses the Alabama state line, it will already have killed people in 2 states. 3 p.m., 250 miles southwest of Rainsville, near Hackleburg in Marion County, that same supercell drops a wedge tornado that flattens almost everything in its path. The Wrangler factory comes apart. Hackleburg High School comes apart. Three-quarters of the town is gone in minutes. The death toll there will eventually reach 72, the deadliest tornado of the entire outbreak. People in DeKalb County will not learn that name for hours. They are still watching James Spann on television. They are still telling each other this is normal April weather. The supercell is still moving northeast, and it is not done. 5:45 p.m. That same supercell, having tracked clear across the state, crosses into northeast Alabama and begins to re-intensify over the foothills below Sand Mountain. On radar at the National Weather Service office in Huntsville, meteorologists watch the rotation tighten. The hook signature deepens. They have already issued more than 90 tornado warnings today. They issue another. "6:10 p.m. A tornado warning is issued for the Lakeview community, the small, unincorporated area just northeast of Geraldine. Sirens sound across the foothills. Some hear them, some don't. Power has been out in pockets since before dawn. Phones light up. No AA weather radios scream. In farmhouses and double widens up and down Highway 75, people herd their children into hallways, into bathtubs, into basements they hope are deep enough. 6:24 p.m. At Beulah Baptist Cemetery, just east of Lakeview, the trees come down in long parallel rows, all pointing the same direction, all snapped at the same height. The tornado is still organizing. It has not yet decided what it wants to be. 6:27 p.m. Approaching Fife. The funnel widens. Witnesses describe 2, then 3, then 4 subvortices spinning around a central axis like dancers around a maypole. The whole structure begins to look like a wedge. Wider than it is tall, no longer a rope, no longer a cone, just a wall of black moving across the green hills. "6:30 p.m. Shiloh. Along Heaton Road, the tornado expands from 100 yards wide to nearly half a mile in less than a minute. Air begins to spin like a drill. A metal farm building disintegrates. Homes anchored to their foundations with bolts and straps are torn loose and erased. Pavement is scoured off the country roads. The damage left behind, when surveyors reach it days later, will be rated EF5, the highest level on the enhanced Fujita scale. Estimated peak winds, over 200 miles per hour. 6:34 p.m. Just southeast of downtown Rainsville, the tornado crosses Highway 75. A school bus is lifted off the road, mangled, and thrown across the highway, stripped down to its chassis. A huddle house on the south side of town is hit hard enough to distort the building's metal frame. Only one wall is left standing.
Kill people. And if we're not successful at that, we're not successful at anything.
6:36 p.m. Plainview High School. The tornado strikes the campus near full strength. Gymnasiums collapse. The cafeteria is torn open. The DeKalb County Schools Coliseum, where local kids had played basketball and walked across stages at graduation, sustains catastrophic structural damage. Damage to the school will eventually be assessed at $10 to $15 million. It is Wednesday. It is after hours. The hallways, by some grace, are empty. 6:38 p.m. Lingerfelt Road, east of downtown Rainsville. This is where the tornado reaches its absolute peak. Along this stretch, an exceptionally well-built stone house, the kind locals had always called bomb-proof, is lifted off its foundation and erased so completely that surveyors will struggle to find recognizable pieces of it. A massive cement and stone support pillar is uprooted and torn out of the ground, taking part of the foundation slab with it. Vehicles in the yard are deformed beyond recognition. One is thrown into a ravine and folded around a tree. Trees are not just snapped. They are debarked, stripped down to pale white shafts. It looked like a giant had dropped his fists on the highway.
There's a tornado right there. Guys, everybody go.
The wind started howling and
6:42 p.m., Sylvania. The tornado, still half a mile wide, still violent, still rated EF5 in pockets, scours through subdivisions and farmland. Homes in older neighborhoods are reduced to debris fields strewn a mile downwind. Mobile homes do not just collapse, they cease to exist. People who survive will tell the same story over and over. The noise, then the pressure, then nothing. And then the rain, and the silence, and the moaning of someone in the next yard. "6:48 p.m., Hennigar. The funnel begins to narrow. The wedge starts to lose its definition. To people watching from the bluffs above the valley, it looks, for the first time, like the tornado is dying. 6:55 p.m., near Rising Fawn, Georgia, just across the state line, the tornado lifts off the ground. The supercell that birthed it, the same supercell that had been on a kill streak for nearly 5.5 hours, across 2 states, 3 EF-rated tornadoes, keeps moving northeast, and will spawn yet another deadly tornado in Ringgold, Georgia, within the hour.
Get it started. Oh my God.
But here, on this stretch of the foothills, it is suddenly quiet. The roar is gone. The rain falls straight down. Somewhere in Rainsville, a car alarm is going off. Somewhere else, a child is calling for her mother. 25 people in DeKalb County are dead. Their families do not yet know. The first responders into Rainsville and Sylvania were not first responders. They were neighbors. They were farmers in pickup trucks who had heard the roar and driven straight toward it. They were teenagers with flashlights. They were a man in his work boots digging through a pile of 2x4s where a house used to be, calling his sister's name. The official rescue effort, when it caught up, found that the rescue effort had already started without it.
Meteorologist Mark Prater joins us now with the very latest.
Where's that thing headed?
Well, it's headed our direction. Right now, it's all out across the low.
Power lines were down across 30 miles. Cell towers were dark. Hospitals in Fort Payne and Scottsboro filled in less than an hour. Some of the wounded were driven in the beds of trucks because no ambulance could get through. The smell that hung in the air that night, a smell survivors would never forget, was a mix of fresh-cut pine and natural gas and wet insulation and something older and quieter underneath. By midnight, volunteers were arriving from Tennessee and Georgia and Mississippi with chainsaws and water and bandages, and nowhere in particular to go, but somewhere they were needed.
As we go through the next 24 hours, we're going to see an active weather setup. No reason to get overly excited about it, but it is something we're going to have to make sure.
The sun came up on April 28th over a county that did not look like itself. The path of the tornado was visible from the air as a brown scar nearly 37 miles long, in places half a mile wide, cutting through forests and pastures and subdivisions in a single straight line, as if drawn with a ruler. Houses on one side of a street were untouched. Houses on the other side were gone. Foundations sat empty in the spring grass. Cars were wrapped around trees. A child's shoe lay in a field 2 miles from the nearest house.
This area of moderate risk is now shifting towards Alabama for our day tomorrow. That means we could see tornadoes, actually a few.
The final toll, when it came, was difficult to absorb. In DeKalb County alone, the Rainsville tornado killed 25 people and injured hundreds more. Across the state of Alabama, the April 27th outbreak would kill more than 240 souls. Across the South, more than 320 in a single day. Property damage from the outbreak as a whole climbed into the billions. The The Rainsville tornado itself caused over $10 million in damage to the local schools alone, and far more across the homes and businesses it had erased.
This is one graphic that I haven't shown before, and I can tell you this is a real significant, at least.
The American Red Cross set up a disaster relief center at the local high school, the same Plainview High School that had been torn open the night before. The Salvation Army rolled mobile feeding units into neighborhoods that no longer had kitchens. The Southern Baptist Convention served meals out of folding tables in parking lots. Funerals filled the small churches of DeKalb County for weeks. In some cases, families buried more than one of their own on the same afternoon.
Have been fully staffed throughout the course of the day. We've been monitoring how this is going to unfold, and joining me, we also have Kate.
In the months that followed, the questions began. Why had so many died despite hours of warning? How had warning systems failed where they had failed and held where they had held? Storm researchers studied the outbreak for years. The National Weather Service refined its messaging language for catastrophic events, leaning into starker, more direct phrasing, the kind of words people would not be able to mistake for routine.
Actually now going to be starting round 2 of these strong storms and watching a storm over Walker County that
Alabama hardened its building codes and pushed for safe room programs across tornado-prone counties. Communities invested in NOAA weather radios and made them available, sometimes for free, to families who had not had one in 2011. James Spann, the meteorologist who had stayed on the air across central Alabama for nearly 12 unbroken hours that day, became something close to a folk hero across the state.
supercell thunderstorms. And supercell thunderstorms, you can see tornado long-lasting.
Plainview High School was rebuilt. So was the Huddle House. So were most of the homes along Lingerfelt Road, though many of the families who had lived there chose to move and never come back. A memorial was raised in Rainsville to honor the lost. The names of the 25 cut into stone, set in a quiet park where every April 27th since, the community gathers, prays, and reads each name aloud. Tornadoes do not last long. The Rainsville tornado was on the ground for 36 minutes. Half a high school class period. A short lunch break. Less time than it takes to drive from Fort Payne to Huntsville on a clear day. And in those 36 minutes, 25 people went to bed in their own homes the night before and never woke up there again. Whole neighborhoods came apart. A school bus became scrap. A stone house was lifted into the sky and never seen again.
Also joining us, we have Ted McInerney. Ted, we're watching these storms very carefully because once they go and they...
The wind passed. The wind always passes. But the people of DeKalb County will tell you, all these years later, standing at a granite wall with 25 names cut into it, that the wind is also still here. It is here in the tree line that hasn't grown back. It is here in the empty foundation where a grandfather used to sit on his porch on summer evenings. It is here in the grandchild who never knew her grandmother because of a Wednesday in April. In just 36 minutes, an entire stretch of northeast Alabama was rewritten. Neighborhoods erased, families broken open. The land itself stripped down to the dirt. A quiet, permanent reminder of how much the sky can take from us in a single breath, and how some scars never fade.